as far as the dignity of work, I mean, we talk about the fact that, God works and did work and still is working every day. And he created mankind. And the first thing he said to Adam and Eve is, the garden is here and it's yours, for you to safeguard and to work. So we just go back to the beginning, to the fundamentals about the dignity of work. And that's what we were created for.
And welcome to Miracles from the Hill podcast, where we share raw stories that display the anatomy of God's grace here at Miracle Hill Ministries. If this is your first time joining us, please subscribe. And of course, you can like, comment, and leave a review. To connect with us, visit our website linked in the description box. And now, here's our host, Ryan Dirk.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome to another Miracles from the Hill podcast. I'm Ryan. I'm your host. We are excited that you're here. If you're coming back, thanks for joining us again on another amazing podcast. If you're new, thanks for checking us out. We are still in our series on the experience of homelessness, and we have with us today Mr. Ron Clark. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Ryan.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So we're going to get into what the episode's about, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I will. So first of all, I've been in Greenville about 3.5 years. Moved here from California, but I am a South Carolina native, so I think for most people it's okay if I come back to South Carolina.
Right.
Otherwise, maybe not so welcome here, being a crazy Californian. But I grew up in Atlanta. Got married there, high school and college, and then spent half my life in California and in the tech world, and needed to move back to the East Coast, closer to family, and happened to visit a friend here in Greenville and just loved it and could tell it was a good place to be. So I've enjoyed being here and connecting with Miracle Hill.
Wonderful. So we're going to be talking today about Jobs for Life. So let's before we get into what Jobs for Life is, let's dispel a rumor, right? So we're on this series about the experience of homelessness, and there's this old school thinking that people see somebody who they believe is experiencing homelessness, and they think to themselves, this person just needs to go get a job, and everything in their life will get fixed. And the reality is that often their experience is much more complicated than that. But employment certainly becomes part of the solution, but more than that, there's a purpose in that. And so we're going to dig into exactly what Jobs for Life is and how you kind of were the catalyst to get that going at Miracle Hill. But let's start out with how you wound up, getting connected to Miracle. So how did you feel called to get involved in community in your life?
Yes. So about 10 years ago, I'd say my faith hit an inflection point. There have been a couple of those in my life where my faith just went to the next level. But about 10 years ago, I felt like very clearly God was calling me to get involved and to serve. And I wasn't sure quite what that meant yet, but it seemed pretty clear to me. I could hear God's voice saying that I want you here in this church and I want you to serve. And so when I heard that message, then I started asking myself and asking God, I'm here, Lord, what do you want me to do? And one thing led to another. I got connected to a woman who had a real heart for community service. Mm-hmm. She connected me with some agencies helping homeless people in Northern California. And so I started serving and then started recruiting people from other churches to come and serve with us. And so that was my entree into working with the homeless and needy people. And I found it really gratifying, and I felt like that was my calling, and that's a place where I could help. So
And Ron, prior to that, you had no experience with
none
people experiencing homelessness.
That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah. So we served at a shelter in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, where there are lots of homeless and needy people living in cars and nearly freezing and that sort of thing. So it really opened my eyes to the needs, and like I said, I began serving in myself, and then recruited other people and formed small groups to go and serve together. So when I moved to Greenville, I connected with First Presbyterian Church. My best friend from school days lives here, and
Really?
I went to that church with him, and I wanted to get reconnected serving. And there were some men at the church leading Bible studies at the Greenville Rescue Mission. And so I connected with them, went to the mission, sit in on some of the Bible study groups they were doing for men at the shelter. And I realized pretty quickly that they didn't really need me for that. They had that covered. But in the course of being there, I got to meet David Hanna.
Yeah.
He was the director at the time. And during a conversation with Dave, he mentioned Jobs for Life, which was a program he had seen used at a shelter in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I said, gosh, I don't know a thing about it, Dave, but I will look into it. And I ended up, starting the Jobs for Life program here in Greenville.
Wonderful. So, a need seen is an assignment given, and you wound up in one of the longest standing church partners of Miracle Hill in all of
Yes.
Greenville, that being First Pres. And so the Lord brought you to Greenville and just slid you right into another position.
I look back on it, and clearly God had a plan, and he was moving things into place. And I just love to see how that works, but that is what happened. So,
All right, so let's understand what Jobs for Life. What exactly is Jobs for Life?
okay, Jobs for Life is a program really to help people that are getting back up on their feet to learn how to be good employees.
Okay.
And it starts with talking about the dignity of work. And, we are serving and operating classes for the men at the Greenville Rescue Mission. Those guys, for the most part, have not had good role models in their life in the past. They don't know what it means to be a good employee. They're typically good at securing a job, maybe an entry-level job. They're not so good at keeping that job. And so this program really fits in nicely there to help them become good employees. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot behind it, but that's the basic concept.
And so that would then be the kind of the primary goal of Jobs for Life, or is the primary goal for them to get a job?
The primary goal of the program is to help move these men from just securing a job, which they can typically do, to having a career, and to pursue something, to have a career plan that gets them to a job that takes advantage of their skills and their gifts, and something that's of interest to them, something other than just going to work, earning a paycheck.
So the tagline for Jobs for Life is uplifting humanity through the dignity of work. What does that mean?
There's a lot packed in there, but I think what it really is about is changing people's attitude about work, as I mentioned, so they can become a good employee. And the end goal is for people to be self-sustaining again, be able to provide for themselves and their families, and actually end up being in a position where they can give back because they become productive in their jobs and careers.
So how was the program itself started?
Interesting story. It started in Raleigh, North Carolina, over 25 years ago. And it started as a conversation between a pastor at a local church there and a paving contractor. So the church needed to have their parking lot repaved. The contractor was a member of the congregation, was having coffee with the pastor. He talked about the need to get the parking lot redone. The contractor said, He'd love to help, but he was short of employees. He needed more people. And the pastor said, wow, well, we've got people in the church that are unemployed and need work. But frankly, some of them, he said, are not ready to go to work. So they talked about what could they do to organize something to take these guys that wanted to work but weren't prepared to do that, and how could they assist them so they could go to work and solve both the problems that the pastor and the contractor had. So
the program developed.
It came out of that, exactly.
So I'm going to make an assumption that at some level the program starts with like a biblical basis of work as a design from God. I mean, going all the way back to Genesis, right?
Absolutely, it does. I'll say this: the program is pretty extensive. It's typically 16 classes over an 8-week period, and the entire program is biblically based. So there's scripture and there are character studies from the Bible just throughout the lesson. So it's definitely biblically based. It does go back to Genesis. And as far as the dignity of work, I mean, we talk about the fact that, God works and did work and still is working every day. And he created mankind. And the first thing he said to Adam and Eve is, the garden is here and it's yours, for you to safeguard and to work. So we just go back to the beginning, to the fundamentals about the dignity of work, and that's what we were created for.
So I've got a note here that I don't understand, so maybe you can help me understand it. So how is dignity of work the opposite of materialism?
Well, I think this whole concept of dignity of work is a foreign concept to a lot of people. Especially, I think the men in the rescue mission, a lot of them have had a hard life, and they've always viewed work as, at best, a necessary evil. It's something you do to earn a little money so you can have a place to live and feed yourself. Maybe not the best attitude about work. Looking at it as employers are always trying to take advantage of you. They just want to pay you the minimum, get the most work out of you. It's just that whole attitude, the way you view work and view your job, is negative. And it doesn't great for a good working relationship. So we work to upend that and dispel those notions.
So over the course of the 16 weeks, so they're doing different character studies. Are there like specific soft skills that they're working on to help them be good employees, and maybe some examples of those?
Yes, exactly. So there are several key things about the program. One is it's biblically based, certainly. Number two, we have a dedicated mentor we call a champion for each student. So it's one-to-one relationship. It takes a lot of volunteers to run a Jobs for Life class. So we have the champions, and then we do these character studies from the Bible. An example of that is, one of the first ones is Joseph, and about his life and how he was mistreated, sold into slavery by his brothers, and how did he handle that situation? Well, he became, the best, most responsible slave in the household and rose to a position of authority, right? And then later was betrayed by the slave owner's wife, ended up in prison unjustly. And what did he do in prison? He became a model prisoner, was given responsibility, eventually was responsible for all the other prisoners. So he just continued to, rise above the situation he was in, even though he was unjustly treated, and was an excellent, model employee, serving God the whole time, and it always worked out to his benefit. So, we use stories like that to get people thinking about how do they approach work and what's their attitude, and how could it be different.
So it doesn't, in that case, it doesn't even matter what the employer is doing. What matters is what you as the employee, how you're responding to the situation.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's great.
Yep. And then you ask about, soft skills and so forth. We have exercises that we go through with the class, analyzing tough job situations. Where what do you do when there's someone that's disruptive in the workplace? When there's what do you do when there's conflict in the workplace? Do you do what you might be inclined to do instinctively and take them out in the parking lot and work them over?
Yeah.
Or, do you have is there a more constructive way to handle that? So we do, it's very practical discussions and workshop activities around resolving conflict, as an example.
So could you talk a little bit more about the champions?
Yes.
So you have a class going on, and for every participant, there is a person kind of assigned to walk with them?
Absolutely. So we start off, from the first class, we will have as many champions in the room as there are students. We start each session by having a meal together. We sit down to dinner and talk. And I used to worry about how would we match, one of these volunteer champions with a student. It was I lost some sleep over that, and I got some good advice to sort of leave that to God and let that happen organically. And I'm just amazed how it does. So when we sit down in the room with the students and the champions and have that first meal, people just start talking and with each other, and we'll do that, for 2 or 3 sessions, and then the matches are made. People have found someone they relate to, and the champion, they're really there to be a coach, and a supporter. Their job is to be a good listener and just help the student get through the program so he can graduate, and to help them do the work that they need to do. And there's quite a bit of it, and there's homework as well. So it's to be a sounding board and a resource, something that most of these guys have never had in their life. So the champion role is huge, and I'm just so impressed with the men that come forward to volunteer their time to do this.
And you've seen some graduating classes. Have you seen those kind of champion? What's the other person called? If the first person
student,
champion and student, have you seen
correct,
those champion and student relationships extend long beyond past the shelter?
Absolutely, and it's really heartwarming to see. But we do have a number of cases of that, and the champions are willing. It takes 2 to keep that going, but we do have examples from our last class that graduated last spring. One of our champions, David Owen, it turns out he's from a small town near Gaffney, and his student that he was mentoring is from there. So he periodically will be driving over to visit his family, and he takes his student with him so he can visit with his own family.
Wow.
And they have dinner together about once a month and just have that ongoing relationship. So it's been gratifying to see that. And it just, again, it happens organically, and which I take to mean it's God's will, and He's behind it. So He helps us with these matches.
We just need to stay out of His way, right?
Exactly.
So you talked earlier about kind of helping people identify their skills and gifts. Is there a component to the program that helps them to figure out what they'd be best at?
There is. We part of the program in the early stages is a career assessment, and this is a tool that Jobs for Life has outsourced. We buy this assessment tool, but it's a great way to get the students thinking about, what am I really interested in? What maybe they haven't even spent much time thinking about what they'd like to do as a career, because they're so concerned with the day-to-day, let me find just a job, let me wash dishes or whatever so I can get a paycheck, right, and get started. So the career assessment is very good at that, and it gives us a basis to talk with them further, right? To develop ideas around their interest.
So, most of the guests that are in our shelters, they're in survival mode,
Yes.
right? When they think about a job, they're thinking about a paycheck so that they can move out of the mission.
Yes.
And what you're suggesting to them is that they think about it not just as something that's important to have, but this concept of dignity in their work. How do you help them to kind of rearrange their mental furniture to see, a job not just as a means to an end?
Right. I think it's just part of the Jobs for Life experience, a process that happens over the 16 lessons in the 8 weeks, including those character studies. I mentioned their career assessment. One of the big takeaways from the program for students is a vocational plan. So we get them to think about, once they do that career assessment, what's a job that you would like to have, but maybe you're probably not ready for today. So this vocational plan identifies that job. It requires that they understand the requirements to get that job. Maybe it's training, maybe it's a degree, or at least a GED, it depends. But and then once you identify the requirements of that job, we actually have them do an assessment and an inventory of, okay, which of these requirements do I have today, do I meet, and which ones are lacking? So that's the gap. And then what do I do about the gap? Do I need some training? Is there something at Greenville Tech that I could do, a course I could take, a certification I could obtain, that will help me, meet all the requirements to get that job? Are there jobs that I could do, a series of jobs to work up to where I want to be? So that's all part of that vocational plan. It's a very concrete thing. And we work on that over the course of the entire 8 weeks. One of our early champions in the first class turned out to be a department head at Greenville Tech. And so now every time we do a class, we have him come in and talk for an hour about the offerings at Greenville Tech. It's an amazing institution, really. It's a great local resource.
Sure.
Yeah. So we have him do that early in the process as well, and I think it gets people thinking about, well, I didn't know I could do that. And then some of these courses and certifications don't take years; they're a few months. And so I think it gets men thinking again, too, about, well, maybe I could, obtain this certification or get this training so I can do something besides, an entry-level menial job.
So essentially you're helping them take what maybe in their brain was a dream,
Yes.
and turn it into a goal.
Exactly.
Right? With
Yes.
palatable steps that they can,
Yes.
achieve something, over some period of time.
Exactly. And I'll say too, we've had some cases where people were, God bless them, they were dreaming big, and maybe thinking of a career that wasn't really obtainable given their age and stage of life and their training and education and so forth. So it's all part of the process, but we help them reel that in so that it's realistic. When it comes time to identify the steps you have to take to get there, that's when the reality, piece comes into play, and people realize, okay, that's a big gap I can't close, but I can do something else related.
So let's go back to the champions for a minute. So the champions are there while these classes are happening. What is the champion's job? Is it just to be present and just walk with the human being?
The first thing they want to do is develop a relationship. And when we train our champions, we have a curriculum. We can do it in a one session thing on a Saturday morning, but we tell them the first thing they want to do is become a friend, create a relationship, get to know the individual, just like you would a friend, meeting over coffee. And so of course, that happens over time. It takes time, but that's the first thing, and that involves being a good listener. And then the coach part of it is, talking with the student about what we're doing in the lesson, about the homework that they have to do after each class, reviewing that homework with them, what parts of this were a struggle, did you have trouble with, just sitting with them and really talking about what we're doing in the class. A big component of this, too, besides the vocational plan, is the development of a professional-looking resume. So there's a lot of interaction between the champion and the student about preparing those things, the vocational plan and the resume. So there's plenty of opportunity to get to know each other and to coach and support and encourage.
So as in the case of the Greenville Rescue Mission, as men are coming in and they have different things that they need to do to work on their life, not always is pursuing employment the first thing they need to do. How does the staff go about determining who's in this program? I'm sure you have a dialogue with the director and the counselors.
Yes, we do. That's a great question. We had a meeting last Friday with Jeremy Huff, director of the Rescue Mission. And we were talking about this upcoming class and student selection. And he knows, he's familiar with our program, who is most likely to benefit. And really, that recruitment and selection process is heavily dependent on the counselors who know these men individually and where they are in their journey, to get back up on their feet. So we're typically getting people that have taken care of their physical needs, maybe addiction recovery, health issues, people that are a little further along in the process and are ready to think about employment. So the counselors are huge in that. So it's very much a collaborative thing. So
many of these individuals, because of their life situation, they will go, into employment opportunities that are kind of, low paying, easy to fill positions. And that can feel on purpose, defeating to them, right? They're not doing something that necessarily brings a tremendous amount of value to their life.
Yes.
Maybe they're doing the proverbial hamburger flipping or whatever the case may be. How does Jobs for Life help them to find joy, even in that? Find joy in just the kind of the biblical mandate of work.
Right. I think some of that comes from our character studies. Like I mentioned the story about Joseph, who, no matter what his situation was, he was striving to be productive and helpful and, basically a good employee. I think Joseph did it in an attempt to honor God, which was very important to him and his faith. But, we have a series of stories like that. And that combined with the vocational plan, which says, here's a way that you can move forward in your career and do something besides the entry-level job and something that you would actually have an interest in. That's the hope and the goal and to move these guys forward and to get them looking at it beyond, what's in it for me today, a longer-term view.
What do you think often surprises the champions about their experience? Like they probably come in thinking they're going to fix somebody, and the Lord does something in their life.
Absolutely, it's one of the biggest takeaways that we've had from the classes we've done. We meet and debrief at the end after graduation, our champions and then the leaders and facilitators. And by far, most of the comments were, we thought we were going to go and give and serve, and we end up benefiting tremendously. It's so rewarding, and people just feel blessed to be able to serve and give like that. So everyone involved with the program benefits, we hope, and it seems like they do.
So clearly, you're using this program to help underserved, low-income individuals. In this case, people experiencing homelessness. Mm-hmm. When you're teaching the materials or you're going through the materials, are there things in it that you go, man, this is just lost in society as a whole? Like this philosophy is just, no one gets this anymore.
Absolutely. For my career, I do executive recruiting for technology companies. And, of course, we encounter a lot of young people, millennials, Gen Z, and so forth. And, there are a lot of themes and talks about, how the new younger workforce is so different than prior generations. And there's not a commitment to the company at all. It seems like, a lot of people are just there to see what they can get out of the job and then quickly move on to the next one and get a little more money. So I see some of the same themes there that people in the workforce that are not homeless, could certainly benefit from exposure to some of these values.
Like, is there a specific value or biblical principle that just jumps out at you that we all need?
Yes, and I think you touched on it in your question. I think it's to realize that that's one way to honor God is through our work, that He created us to do that, and that we should work. There's dignity in it, and it's a way to honor Him. And I think that's largely missing just in society on the whole.
So you took us on this journey of God kind of telling you, He wants you in community service, mm-hmm. which led to an experience in Northern California, which led to Greenville, and here you are today,
yes,
teaching this very specific course. What has the Lord taught you through
it? I've got a lot of lessons that I've taken away. One that I was talking about with a friend just last night. God is very patient. God has waited until I was 60 years old to really use me or get to me so that He could use me, to serve His kingdom by working with homeless and needy people. And I'm 72 now, but I'm just amazed that where my life has gone. And it's all about, I think, God being patient, working on me to the point where I was willing to listen and follow His lead. And I just say He's so very patient, but He had a plan. I never knew what it was, but He had a plan, and His plans are better than ours. That's a big takeaway for me.
So if somebody's listening to this and they think, man, I need to get involved, I need to do something, what advice would you give them?
Think about it, pray about it, try to be open to hearing answers, and then take some action. Get involved, do something. Like in my example, at First Presbyterian, I said I would go help these guys lead Bible studies. Well, that wasn't really where I could add value and contribute, and I wasn't needed there. But it led me to the exposure to David Hanna, and then to this. So, step out there and do something. Once I decided to do Jobs for Life, I got excited about the program, of course, and I got trained to be a leader and so forth. And then I set about recruiting volunteers, right? We needed a lot of champions and so forth. And I'll never forget asking, excuse me, I asked people that I met socially, with men talking at a cocktail party or dinner club or something. And I remember asking several people early on. I got a lot of yeses, but one guy in particular that I approached, I didn't really know him because I was new in town at the time. But we were in a social setting, and I told him about Jobs for Life, and I said, we're looking for champions, mentors. And he said, I've been dying to mentor. And I just haven't had an opportunity. So it's amazing to me how God has provided for this program and brought people and volunteers, and it's just great to see him at work and it coming together. So
Ron, if somebody hears this and they want to specifically work with you and be a champion,
yes.
How would we go about connecting you to?
I'm happy to provide my contact information, but we're really part of the men's ministry out of First Presbyterian here in Greenville.
Yeah.
We're making a big announcement this coming Sunday about the upcoming class, and we're recruiting volunteers. So we'll have, we're going to do an announcement at all three services, Moment for Missions, it's called, and we'll talk about Jobs for Life. It'll be in the bulletin and on the website at First Presbyterian in Greenville.
And if somebody's interested and they don't necessarily know if they want to do Jobs for Life, they can just go to miraclehill.org and sign up to be a volunteer, and we will help them figure out where the Lord wants to use them.
Thank you.
Ron, thank you very much for being here and for telling us about Jobs for Life. Would you do us the honor and close us in prayer, specifically praying for people to understand the dignity of work and for God to provide employment opportunities for our guests?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me. So, dear Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to sit with Ryan and talk about Jobs for Life and the work that Miracle Hill does. We're so thankful for all the people that support Miracle Hill and the wonderful things they do. We pray that your message of the dignity of work and work as a means to honor you will get out to the community, Lord, and people will understand this and become better employees and better fathers and mothers and family, and that you would continue to bless this program and to bless Miracle Hill. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks again for coming on, Ron.
Thank you, Ryan.
Bye, everybody.